Monday Night Raw last night, Bully. Tape show. They taped it after last week's show, which helps. And you mentioned this earlier. The 2-hour Raw definitely helps. That would have been tough for 6 hours of pro wrestling for a lot of fans on a Monday night. But you know what? Even though it was a taped show, Bully, I think we got a few nuggets. The biggest for me was Jey and Jimmy and their little face-to-face in the back. And it seems like, you know, one is ready to reconcile, the other one not so much. So, and I love that because I feel like, Bully, if this was the WWE of old, all right, Jey and Jimmy are back. Here they are, both on Monday Night Raw. Let's get them back together. Nobody remembers what happened, 7 months ago or a year ago. But I think Triple H understands how smart the WWE fan is. A lot of history between Jey and Jimmy, and you can't just say water under the bridge. Or we had our differences in the past, but let's move on. A lot of animosity between those two, and it's going to be interesting, Bully, if and when they can reconcile and what that's going to mean for the Bloodline storyline.
Yeet.
Yep.
I am enjoying this just as much as any other aspect of the Bloodline. Just because it's a subset of a major story doesn't mean it can't be interesting. I loved the looks on their faces. I loved the look on Jey's face when he walked into his dressing room and he saw, Jimmy there. And then Jimmy's like, oh, man, I got to talk to my brother. I got to, find him. And then when they are face-to-face, the look of disgust. But that's the first time I've seen them in the same shot in a long time. Yep. So I actually, like for last night, I felt good for a moment before I was reminded of the story. I felt good to see Jimmy and Jey back standing next to each other. And eventually things will work out. Eventually we're going to get OG Bloodline back together. Eventually you're going to have Roman, Jimmy, Jey, and the wise man, Paul Heyman, all standing together. Big group hug. Who knows? It's good storytelling.
Or Bully, or not.
Nah, I think we'll get it.
I think, and this could be, who knows, 2, 3, 5 years down the road. I still feel like the whole Bloodline will be on the same page and be together because, as you're always reminded, blood is thicker than water. They're all related. And just like in real life, you might have a falling out with your brother or a cousin or an uncle or even your parents. At some point, you reconcile and get back together. Why? Because you're family and you love each other. There is family ties and true love between all these members, but how long and when do they get back on the same page? And maybe we do get Bloodline versus Bloodline at Survivor Series. Where does Jey and Jimmy fall in? Which bloodline do they fall into? That's going to be a story because I'm sure there's going to be family trying to convince them that's who they should be with and who they should side with. Or, Bully, and I believe you put this on social media during Monday Night Raw last night, when you get that moment where Jey and Jimmy Uso finally embrace and you know that the Usos are back together, how great that moment is going to be. If they reconciled in the back during a taped Monday Night Raw, that's a dropping of the ball moment. You want that to be on a big stage in front of thousands upon thousands of fans.
And you want to let it build. You want to milk the moment for everything that it's worth. You want that moment in time where Jimmy and Jey are there and they're just looking at each other and the fans are chanting, hug it out, or shake his hand, or kiss and make up, whatever it is. You want the simmer to turn into a boil, the boil to turn into the eruption, and then you pay it off and you go from there. I mean, can't you just see the scene of Jimmy and Jey across the ring from one another? And one guy takes a step forward, and then the other guy takes a step forward, and the whole build to when they finally get to the middle of the ring, and they're just looking face to face. And imagine if they both could cry. Actually, I shouldn't bring up Samoans crying because Vince Russo brought it up, and he didn't do himself any favors. Could you imagine these guys crying, brothers crying, because they can't even remember what they were fighting about, but they knew that they were fighting, and then they just hug it out?
And usually, isn't it true that sometimes when you have those conflicts with family, that it goes on so long that you kind of forget why you even started arguing and fighting in the first place? So you could have that type of moment. And then speaking of hug, you got The Rock, chasing a hug every which way. So I'm sure he's going to want that hug moment with Roman when it's all said and done as well. So
just in my family alone, I remember my dad and one of my uncles. My God, and this was my closest uncle. This was my godfather. Like, it was the tension
hard.
and the animosity for years was just so bad. And then I think my grandmother died, their mom died, and then all of a sudden they kissed and made up immediately. It goes back to my whole thing about, if you're at odds with somebody, pick up the phone, call them, go see them. I'd rather talk to somebody and see them when they're alive than dead. So I'm enjoying everything that I'm getting from the Bloodline. It's soap opera. It's fighting opera. It's a story with great characters. And when you watch a Bloodline match, it's no big deal, but it's the biggest deal. People talk about, he's only got 5 moves. Yeah? Well, that's probably 2 more than it actually takes to get to the top.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other thing I loved about Monday Night Raw last night was Tiffany Stratton. Tiffany Stratton shows up. Tiffany Stratton was a guest on this show, and I was kind of egging her on about cashing in that Money in the Bank briefcase against Nia. And she goes, well, there's another women's world champion too. And she showed up last night, Tiffany Stratton, with Liv, and there was a cash in the briefcase moment for her during that main event. Did not happen because of Dom Mysterio. But I love the fact that Tiffany Stratton kind of teased that, hey, it's not just Nia Jax, there's Liv Morgan out here as well. I like that last night.
I enjoy Tiffany with the briefcase. I like the interaction with Nia. Tiffany is going to be a major player one day in the WWE. I think that when you eventually get that cash in from Tiffany, the people are going to go crazy for her. You know how I feel about Tiffany from the first day she was on this show. I am completely immersed in her character. I think she does a great job with it. Can't say enough nice things. Much like all of the other stories that are being told in the WWE, I either like it or really like it, because everything I'm seeing has some kind of story. Truth and Miz, there's some kind of story. Tiffany, Nia, there's some kind of story. Bloodline, everybody's got something. Nothing feels cold. Nothing feels, how about here? This will put it in perspective. Nothing feels because.
Yeah, not anymore. And we were saying that word a lot 3 or 4 years ago. We're certainly not saying it now in the world of the WWE.
How did you feel about Cody and Gunther?
I loved it. And the fact is that, you know what? I kind of like the respect there. I don't think it would have been the right place or time for them to throw a bunch of barbs at one another. I like the fact that they acknowledged one another and acknowledged the championships. And even Gunther throwing out the one negative of Cody being that secondary champion. Why? Because Gunther has something to prove here. Because it is the undisputed WWE Championship that Cody holds. And we always kind of called that World Heavyweight Championship as the other championship, and whoever holds it as the other champion. I love the fact that they acknowledged that last night. And it had that, to me, that face-to-face had that kind of big match feel to it, like they're about to get into something really big. I don't love that Saudi like crown jewel championship. I'm not a big fan of it, but I am a big fan of those two meeting each other, if that makes sense. I don't like the pomp and circumstance around it, but I love the fact that the two world champions facing one another.
I
thought they did a good job last night.
And that probably goes back to your love of it from back in the day when you got like Harley versus Backlund, when you got champion versus champion. What I found interesting was the amount of backlash that I saw on social media. Not just random thing, people actually tweeting me like, Bully, can you believe that Gunther told Cody that Cody was the one responsible for the boom and Cody's responsible for all of this great business, as if Roman was just got thrown away? Doesn't everybody remember what Roman did? And I'm saying to myself, can't wait to talk about this on Busted Open. What is Gunther supposed to say? Gunther's the world champion. Cody's the undisputed champion. What is Gunther going to say to Cody? Hey, remember, this isn't because of you. It's because of Roman. Even if that's the truth, what are you going to do? Tell the WWE universe that it's not because of Cody? You're going to wake them up?
I don't, that backlash makes absolute zero sense to me. First and foremost, Cody acknowledged Roman. Cody acknowledged that he's the guy who beat the guy. So right there, he's acknowledging Roman Reigns and tipping the cap to Roman Reigns and said that Roman Reigns was the ultimate champion. So I don't understand why people are having a problem with it. He acknowledged Roman Reigns, but then again, you're putting over a match. So that's exactly the verbiage Gunther should have used last night.
By the way, side note, did you hear them drop the word beast once, maybe twice?
Brock's coming back at some point.
That was interesting.
Brock is definitely coming back at some point.
For who?
We're going to get Brock and Gunther. That match is going to happen. Now, we thought we were going to get it, and it didn't happen. We're going to get it. Now, who knows? Is that a SummerSlam match? Is that a WrestleMania match? I don't know. I guess it depends how long Gunther is going to hold this World Heavyweight Championship for.
All I know is I would love to see Brock and Gunther, probably much like everybody else out there.
The one thing that worries me, and I feel like this is the thing that most likely will happen, but I will not be a fan of it, and I will criticize it if it does happen, is that we get some kind of non-finish with Cody and Gunther, and if it's like a outside interference from Kevin Owens. I
think that's what you're getting.
I think, and I have a feeling, I think that's what we're getting. That would be very predictable, and it would be a non-finish that I would not be happy with. I would love to get some kind of finish where both look strong. I don't know what that could possibly be, but Kevin Owens interfering, I think that's kind of, I gotta admit, that's kind of lame.
So listen, if you want to book a finish in which both look strong, what do? Like the roll up thing where both guys' shoulders are on the mat, the ref is counting both sets of shoulders, and then one guy gets a shoulder up at 3 and the other guy's shoulder was down. I mean, that's sneaking the win.
I don't even know if you have to. This is where I think WWE would really help if they came back with the time limit. If they had like a time limit draw, because this is a match.
But then who wins that championship? Saudi is paying to have their own championship so they can crown their Saudi champion, blah, 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 blah. So
all right, well, okay, but if that's the case, Bully, and somehow, some way, there's outside interference from Kevin Owens and Gunther beats Cody Rhodes 1, 2, 3, then I'm looking at Gunther as the number one champion in the WWE. He's got to win over Cody Rhodes.
But it'll be with the asterisk of the outside interference. Remember last week, I came up with a suggestion of how to do this where the interference happens without Gunther even knowing about it. So he has, plausible deniability. So it's like, I didn't know anybody interfered. I got up, I turned around, I saw Cody, I grabbed him, I power bombed him, I beat him 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, but that doesn't play. Here's why, Bully. Because when Gunther beat Randy, right, for King of the Ring, there was that little bit of a, was Randy's shoulder up? Did he really get the 3 count? Gunther won the match, but it really bothered him. He said that they had to have that next match because Gunther needed that match. And there's no denying, he beat Randy Orton. He was able to overcome. If you get some kind of outside interference from Kevin Owens, even if Gunther doesn't see it and gets the 1, 2, 3, why would it bother him when it came to Randy Orton and it wouldn't bother him with Cody Rhodes?
Dave, this is going to be a very much here today, gone tomorrow show. I don't think you'll see that championship represented. I think once it's over, it's done with until they move on to their next Saudi show in 6 months. I don't think it gets brought up again. I don't think it's a sticking point. I don't think it's a storyline.
Bully, I tend to agree with you. I said early on that would be impossible for them to do. You're having your 2 world champions on both the men and women's side facing each other. There's got to be some bragging rights. I even mentioned, say Nia Jax was able to get the victory. I could see her holding up that crown jewel championship as the ultimate champion. But I think here, you may be right, Bully. If there is shenanigans, they're going to want you to forget it almost as soon as the show is over. The only way they can do that is to not talk about it again. And it's just a one-off, and they quickly move on. That's the only way that would excuse a non-finish or some kind of wonky finish based on what we've seen and heard from Gunther throughout the last year and this run as King of the Ring and World Heavyweight Champion. And even as Intercontinental Champion, he always wanted to prove himself. So if he gets a wonky win over Cody Rhodes, that's completely out of character for Gunther.
If Cody were to beat Gunther clean, that definitely takes away from Gunther's mystique right now. If Gunther beats Cody clean, that puts a serious chink in Cody's armor. Because now you got a guy who could be walking around going, I don't want this Saudi belt because I beat him clean in the middle. I should have his championship.
Now, if
you need a way out of this.
But the other thing too, though, Bully, if they don't acknowledge it and it's just a one-off and it's just a match for that night and they quickly move on, then we're not going to put any stock into these shows anymore because this is going to be an annual thing. They're going to do this every year.
Sorry,
so then
Dave.
I'm not going to buy into it after
Sorry,
that.
Dave. Enough people will buy into it that if a guy like you drops off, they don't care.
Yeah, well, listen, I think now then it's more about, we used to say about those shows in Saudi kind of being just a show for that market, and they really don't acknowledge it. They've done a good job over the last couple of years of making even the Saudi shows important in their lineage. If they do shows like that, then it's kind of going back to square one.
They're important in the lead up to the show. How important are they after the show?
Well, that was important last night. I mean, obviously for both those matches,
That's
it was
the
important
lead
last
up
night.
to the show.
Yeah. Afterwards, we'll have to wait and see. Again, it would make a good story, like I said, even for Nia Jax to hold that championship afterwards, if she was able to get the victory. With Cody and Gunther, you've put so much stock into Gunther that I think it could hurt. Like if it was a situation where it was Cody versus Seth Rollins, when Seth Rollins was champion and Seth Rollins took the loss, and you can move on from it. And Seth Rollins would be Teflon, and he could take the loss, and it wouldn't hurt him. I think Gunther taking the loss, it would hurt Gunther moving forward.
Winning and losing doesn't matter until winning and losing actually matters. I think at the Saudi show, neither one can get the win clean. I think my personal opinion is the way out of it, little chicanery, maybe a ref bump or behind the ref's back, something. Owens interferes. It's quick. Owens and Cody have the animosity. Gunther gets the win, raises the championship above hand. The next week, Raw, SmackDown. Now we're off to the races with Kevin and Cody.